don't approach it as a negotiation. Usually, not every school allows you to appeal your financial aid. Some schools will say, we don't do that. We give you the best opportunity we can.
Hello, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to my podcast, Renew Motherhood. And this episode is Stress Free Dream College Funding Secrets Revealed. For this episode, I've got an incredible guest here, Kellem. Please briefly introduce yourself. Who are you? Where are you from? And how did you come to this topic?
Well, thank you so much, Blanca, and I'm thrilled to be here. I know that what you do really helps a lot of families. I am a college admissions strategist. I'm in the Chicago, Illinois area, although I can work internationally because I operate primarily through Zoom or Riverside. So I help the families of college-bound students who are confused and overwhelmed with the college admissions process, particularly here in the United States, but also a little bit in Canada, and also families who want to send students from international areas to the United States. So I help those families by walking the student through finding the right fit college. And that is really the key to paying less for college, is having the right fit college. And we do that with less stress and usually for less money. And that also allows the family to really enjoy that college path and enjoy that final year that the student is at home before going off to college.
So that's
That's
great.
what
I
we
love this. Yes, I love this topic because I think there are so many families who don't have the information about this and probably don't know where to go, how to start. And just as you mentioned, feeling overwhelmed. And I think it's so lovely to have you here and to talk about this topic. So, what's the biggest myth about paying for college that you wish every parent knew?
I think the biggest myth is that you have to pay full price for college. I think the biggest myth is that people look at the price tag that is on the school's website and assume that is how much that school is going to cost. And that is not necessarily the case. In fact, if you are paying full price for college at a private school, you're doing something wrong.
Oh, wow.
It's either not the right school or you didn't understand how to get the merit money or you're not applying for scholarships, something along that line. If it's at a public school, you may pay full price, but there is still ways to get more money from the school. So for people who think that they have to pay full price, that's the biggest myth.
Wow, that's fascinating because I think if you see something, there is an offer and it says, okay, it costs this amount of money, you always think, okay, I have to pay this
Mhm.
if I want to get it. So, but that there are options to reduce the price, that's interesting to step into this. So, what's one mistake parents make with financial aid that costs them thousands of dollars?
The biggest mistake is either thinking that they shouldn't fill out the FAFSA. That's the free application for federal student aid. That's a form here in the United States specifically. The biggest mistake there is they either think they make too much money to get anything from the federal government, so they don't fill out the FAFSA,
Mhm.
or they assume that they have to take out loans and that's not necessarily the case. Well, I guess the other biggest problem is really filling out the FAFSA wrong. I've had to help a number of families who were about to get themselves into some real trouble filling out the FAFSA wrong and costing themselves money.
Wow. So actually, you mentioned two things in the beginning, and I was just wondering about the one not finding the right college. What does this mean for the student?
Well, students often think they have a dream school, or perhaps the family thinks, oh, we want to send you to this school. It's such a good school. Well, that may be true. But if your student, here in the States, we have a GPA, the grade point average, which in Canada they use a percentage. In Europe, it's something a little bit different. But the bottom line is that all schools have sort of a specific student that they cater to. And that's less true in Europe, but it's still true because not all colleges are looking for the same students. So
Mhm.
if you have a student who has a 3.8 GPA and they didn't do all that well on their test scores, and they are trying to apply for a college that has very high admission standards, they're either not going to get in, or if they get in, they're not going to get merit money. And merit money is those scholarships that basically are free money for what your student did in high school. They're
Oh,
based on
wow.
leadership, they're based on grade point average, they're based on sometimes on test scores. They can also be based on some other factors. Like I have a student who got a lot of merit money because the school really thinks that he has a lot of potential. They gave him more
Wow.
merit money than he technically qualified for. So they bumped him up a level. Really,
Do the
people
parents know about this?
not usually, no. And they don't understand that they
Hmm.
have to start planning in freshman year of high school, in ninth grade, sometimes even earlier. So when families are looking at the right fit school, they're looking for a school that's really looking for their student. And it might also be that they need to find a school that is one of the ones that recruits their student, one of the ones that comes back and says, "Oh, you're a good fit for our school. Please apply." A lot of times they're like, "No, that's too expensive," or "No, that's not the kind of school we really wanted them to go to, our student to go to."
Hmm.
Usually they're the small private schools, and that
Oh,
I find is where you get more money, and the students, because they're in the right fit school, they're happier. They're not changing majors. They're not wanting to drop out and go to a different school.
and that's actually what we want, right? So
Right.
if we want our kids to go and to be happy and to follow their dream, and if they can stay with what they love and not,
Yes.
yeah, thinking about and saying, oh no, it's not the right place, I don't feel comfortable, it's not the right major, I don't know. So they don't have to switch everything. I think that's what we want, right?
Right.
So that it
Right.
fits really. Can you really negotiate with colleges for more financial aid? How does
Yes.
that conversation go?
Well, the key thing is don't approach it as a negotiation. Usually, not every school allows you to appeal your financial aid. Some schools will say, "We don't do that. We give you the best opportunity we can." But most schools do have an appeal process. Now, they will tell you that it's only if your income changed drastically from the year that they're looking at for financial aid versus today. That is
Hmm.
one of the reasons to do that, but there are a lot of other reasons that you can appeal your financial aid, and I've had students have success writing a letter. It has to be there's a way to word it, and there are reasons that you can use for trying to get more money. Some things are not appropriate, but there are several different reasons to go after more money. And you write a letter, it's very respectful. You're asking for more money. You're asking them to reconsider. And I have one family I've worked with that is fairly well off. I mean, not rich, but fairly well off. And we went back 4 times and doubled the amount of money that we were able to get for the
Oh,
student.
wow.
And it's really just a matter of trying to do it as early as possible. The first time when he got the greatest amount of money, it was really a conversation of, "Look, I really wanna go to this school. This is my first
Hmm.
choice school, but this other school over here has offered me almost a full ride. It's hard for me to justify taking out the amount of loans I have to take out to go here when I've got this other situation over here. How can you help me? Because I want to go to your school." And he also talked about how he would be able to make an impact on campus. That's another thing they're looking for. But I do tell people, don't try to write one of these letters on your own. The people who do usually don't get the money that they want. The
So
other
you
thing,
need to place the right words, right?
yes,
There
yes,
are specific phrases or wordings that you have to use that triggers
yes,
something on the other side. And
right.
oh, wow.
And there's a specific tone, and not everybody understands that tone. But the other thing is that you really need to understand the process at that school. Oh, and the other thing, really, here's the biggest thing. People think that you appeal once, and if you get a no, that's it. That's not the
Hmm.
case. Oftentimes, you have to go back 2 and 3 times, like the case where with this student, we went back 4 times. Granted, we got
Wow.
the biggest chunk up front, but that's because it was coming out of his majors department, not from the school. Then we went back. They really wanted him. Then we went back to financial aid and kept appealing through financial aid and got more.
Yes. So you also need a kind of strategy here to
Yes.
really get the right things, that get what you want. And
Yes.
need a little persistency. I hear this.
Definitely need a little persistence. Yes.
Okay.
And they will often tell you up front, especially in admissions, no, you're not going to get any more money. And that's not necessarily true.
Oh, wow. So if a parent feels it's too late to save for college, what's the best thing they can do?
Look at other alternatives. You may not be able to save for college, but there are other strategies, and you want to talk to your financial advisor or your tax professional about it because you can get yourself into a bad situation where you're going to cost yourself money in terms of fees if you're putting money into a particular type of investment. The
Hmm.
other thing is look at things like scholarships. Now, I'm going to be honest, scholarships are not going to pay for a lot of college. People think that you're going to go out and apply for scholarships and get $20,000. That's not going to happen for most
Hmm.
people. But a lot of times their employers may offer a scholarship. Sometimes employers offer tuition reimbursement for the employee's student now as part of the benefits package
Hmm.
because they're trying to attract people, and that is something that people
Yeah.
want today. So there are a lot of other options, and they also need to take a look at other grants that they can apply for. There are a
Hmm.
number of grants out there. They're hard to get. It takes a lot of lead time, but there are ways to get at least some money for college.
So what does it mean a lot? Oh, sorry.
Well, I was
Yes,
also
please
going
go
to
on.
say, let's not forget that they also need to look at their budget. I'm a
Hmm.
financial coach as well. And one of the things I used to do with families is say, okay, let's find money in your budget. And 9 times out of 10, you can. It might be a slight lifestyle change, but I would rather see a family pull some things out of their budget and maybe not go out to dinner very often, maybe not get that Starbucks coffee. And I know you probably don't have Starbucks in Europe, but
Oh, we
don't
have, we have.
do. Oh boy, they're everywhere, right? So don't
Yeah.
spend $5 a day on Starbucks coffee. Just keep that money and every little bit adds up. So that's another thing to look at.
Yeah. So what does it mean? You need some time, or you just mentioned, okay, it takes time to go. How much? What's the time frame that you have to think about?
Months.
Okay.
Yes. I've actually had people come to me and say, my son got into this great school. It's $90,000 a year. How can you help us get some money? Well, you're coming to me in June and school starts in August and your tuition is due in July. This is not going to happen right now. We should have been doing this last fall when he
Wow.
applied and found out he was going to get in. So, I mean, I don't say it quite that blatantly, but that's the reality is that
Hmm.
it takes months, especially if you're looking at grants. Sometimes those have to go through a committee, especially if it's a grant from a corporation. It'll have to go through a committee, and that can take quite a lot of time. They might only meet once a quarter.
Yes. Yes.
So you have to allow time. And scholarships, it takes a lot of work to get. scholarships. Lots of essays written, lots of time searching for the right scholarships.
So, but you help the parents or the students to write these essays, right?
Yes, and I want to be very clear, I don't write the essays for them because that has
Hmm.
been a request. I do
Hmm.
not do that. That's not ethical. But I will brainstorm with them. I will
Hmm.
give them feedback on their essays. I will help them with the structure, but the essay is 100% from them. But yes, for
Hmm.
both scholarship essays and for college essays, I do help the students.
Yeah, that's great. So they get a helping hand here to navigate through the system. That's great. What's a little known scholarship resource every family should check out?
It's called, I just forgot it. I had the name of it. Bold.org. Bold,
Okay, great.
bold as in B as in boy, OLD as in David.org. That one does not usually have the same scholarships that are spread all over all the other sites. That particular scholarship site does a crowdfunding
Oh, wow.
resourcing. They literally, people will decide that, okay, I want to start a scholarship for, in memory of my brother who passed away but was really interested in this area. And they will put out money for a scholarship, and then people can actually add money to that if they want to support that particular cause. A
Mhm.
student and I were going through a list of scholarships a couple weeks ago, and we found something for dollars was the
Oh,
amount of money. Yeah, so a really odd amount, and you know that that means that some other people added to the amount that was originally posted. But the reason I recommend this is not everybody is out there looking for this one. It's
mhm.
crowdfunded, and the scholarships tend to be very specific to very specific people or very specific backgrounds or skills, which means you're more likely to get the scholarship.
Because you are supported if you have got the skills and they want you to come or they want this to support,
Right.
actually. So that's great. I think here are a lot of opportunities to get into to find this. Wow. How can parents make sure they've not taken on their child's student debt without realizing it?
The only way you can avoid taking on your child's student debt without realizing it is don't take out any loans for them. If you co-sign for a loan here in the United States, and I think this is true in most countries, if you co-sign for a loan for your student, if for any reason they don't pay, the student loan
Hmm.
company is coming back to you. And that then becomes
Yes.
your responsibility. And you do not have a legal way to make your kid pay. The
Mhm.
worst yet is the parent plus loans or the parent loans that where it is only for the parent. And that's usually a federal loan here in the States. There are private loans in all the other countries where you can take out a loan just on your own and use it for your students' college. But if you take out those loans in your name, you are
Mhm.
the one paying for it. In the States, you actually have to sign something that says on this Parent Plus loan, I can never put this in my student's name. I know I am solely responsible for paying this. Now, I do know people who have an agreement with their kids that, okay, if we take this out for you, you're actually the one who's going to be paying it back, even though it's in our name. Well,
Mhm.
don't have a way of enforcing that unless you actually have put together a written agreement and have had that notarized or something, which I don't think most families would be open to doing or would even think.
Probably not. Who wants to go with their child to the notary to sign a
We're going to
contract with
force.
them?
Right, right. So,
Feels a little strange. But yes, it's true. So if there is a way to protect yourself or to protect your child or whatever, you have to go this to do the steps, right?
yes.
But it's better to say, okay, don't take the loan on your name, just leave it on your child's name.
And the reality is that most students, at least their freshman and sophomore year, do not have enough of a credit rating to qualify for any loans on their own. This is
Oh.
why I tell people that if you have access to those federal student loans, which in the
Mhm.
United States, they can take out only a certain amount each year. But if you have access to those, that is actually a better option than taking out private loans
Mhm.
because that's entirely in the student's name and they don't have to have a credit rating to qualify for it. But the other thing is you can always save up and pay that back at the end of school, or you can
Mhm.
be paying it throughout college. You don't have to wait until they graduate to pay that, but it's also at a lower interest rate.
Yes, that's also to consider, right? The interest rate. How much do you have to pay back? So, yeah, always. What's the single most overlooked factor that determines how much financial aid a student receives?
I think that is leadership and outside activities, such as it can be sports, it can be
Mhm.
music, it can be something that's a talent. It can also be some community service things. The reason I say that is when we were talking about that merit money, that's that free money
Mhm.
that the students get for what they did in high school. If they were really involved in a passion project or really involved in one community service where they did a lot that created impact or they had leadership in a variety of different ways, and that doesn't have to be the president of a club. That also factors into merit money at a lot of the schools, or can actually factor into whether or not they're willing to give you scholarships of a different nature. I think a lot of families overlook that when they're planning ahead toward college. Or I think the bigger thing is they're not planning ahead toward college. And it's a very haphazard thing until their last year of high school.
Yes. So you have to be consistent in high school too, right?
Yes.
To be engaged in what you love, really,
Yes.
to follow this so that you can be supported with your passion, actually. I think it's a win-win.
It
But okay. So, what would you say to a family who thinks they have to sell their home to pay for college?
Don't do it. That's the biggest thing I can say is don't do it. Whatever you do, don't do it.
Ah.
First of all, when you are considering selling your home to pay for college, essentially that return on investment in your home is something that you could have used in the future to purchase another home, a smaller home, or money that you could have put into your retirement later on. If you are selling your home to pay for your student's education, you might as well be saying, okay, I'm going to make this sacrifice now, and I'm going to plan that I'm living with my child or student later on in my retirement years because you're really giving up your financial security to do that.
Mm.
I don't remember if we talked about this, Blanca, beforehand, but that's actually how I came to do this. We were
Oh,
getting information. Yes, we were getting some information about how to help my stepkids pay for college. My stepdaughter was in eighth grade, and we were already investigating all of this and trying to investigate scholarships, so on and so forth. And my husband and I were on a call with a so-called college financial advisor or college financial consultant. And he told us that the only way my two stepkids were going to go to college was if we were willing to sell our home or take out a home equity line of credit against our home. And
wow.
I said, well, that's not going to happen. And we got off the call, and my husband looked at me and said, you have all this knowledge. You have the financial knowledge as well as the research on college itself. You should just pivot your business and do this. And that's exactly what I did. That was when my stepdaughter was in eighth grade. She is now a sophomore in high school.
Wow. What I can hear now is there are financial advisors. They are not the best here, right? If they give you an advice to say, okay, you have to sell your home here, and you think, okay, he's an advisor, he's a consultant, I can follow his advice. So I think you can get in trouble here somehow. How would you say, how can you protect families against those mistakes?
Yes, I think first and foremost, you need to do a lot of research. And this is going to
Mhm.
sound self-serving, but working with somebody like myself who knows the ins and outs, who knows there are other opportunities. No, I'm not a financial advisor. I cannot advise exactly what to do, but I can say, here's why I don't think this makes sense. Go talk to your financial person, go talk to your tax professional, but here's what I would like to see you do instead. And knowing what I know about merit money and how to get scholarships through the colleges, not just the private scholarships, I think people will realize they have other options if they're talking to someone like myself. The other thing is, if you're talking to somebody that is a financial advisor, don't take the advice of one person. Get at
Mhm.
least a second opinion. Have
Yeah.
another set of eyes on your taxes as well, because I have found people who had their tax person make a huge mistake on taxes and
Oh,
it affected how they were filling out the FAFSA.
yes, I can totally relate to this. I know this field here in Germany. It's the same. If you go to the wrong person, wow, get a second opinion.
Right, right.
Sometimes, if you have to make big decisions, right? So, and they
Yes.
have got a huge impact. So, it's better to have someone else to look at this. Wow, why are private colleges often cheaper than public universities in the long run? That's strange to me.
It's
When I
strange
heard
to
this
most
first, I
people.
thought, okay.
Well, it's strange to most people because they think they look at the price tag on a private college versus a state school and they see $18,000 a year for the state school versus $40,000 a year for the private school. What they don't realize is that that, first of all, does not include room and board. It doesn't include room and board on the private school either, but I've actually found that the room and board on the state schools can be a little bit more than that on the private schools. Not sure why. But the other thing to consider is that the private schools, as we said before, will heavily discount their price. That is
Mhm.
never the sticker price on the private schools. And sometimes you can get it down to 50% or less from the
Wow.
private schools. I actually have one student who got recruited by a private school. She did get a small sports scholarship, but they wanted her so badly that they went out and looked for other scholarships at the school. $38,000 a year school, and she's paying $2,000. So,
That's incredible. Well done.
yeah,
Oh,
I didn't do it. I just advised her on how to do it. She was already being recruited by the time that I came
but
into
that's it.
contact with her.
Here you
Right.
go.
But there are so many other ways to go about this. And really, a lot of times when you look at the final cost over the years it takes you to graduate from a state school versus the final cost to graduate from a private school, there often either is very little difference or sometimes the private school is less. And here's the other reason why. Right now in the United States, the national average for graduating from a state school is 6 years. The national average for graduating from a private school is 4 years.
Oh,
So, right. And people think their student's going to graduate in 4 years, but with the state schools, especially the really large ones, you don't get the advising properly. You may not be able to get into your classes, the prerequisite classes, because they're filled. Those are the
mhm.
schools where people are more likely to change majors. So, in the long run, with all those things taken into consideration, state schools are often as expensive or more expensive than the private schools.
So don't look at the price at the first time and say, okay, that's it. No.
Right. Right. No, don't look at the original price, and then also maybe even add up what it would cost to go for 5 years instead of 4 years at the state school
Mhm.
versus what it would cost to go to the private school for 4 years, and even there, I think you're gonna start to see that it's evening out, and that's before you even get all the merit money and any other scholarships from
So
the
even
private.
from the time you can save the money, right?
Mhm.
So if you reduce just the time, if you're able to reduce the time, that's
Yes,
great. And it's a lot, right? Because
it is.
you're paying per year and it's, yes, this can save a lot of money. So, yes, what's your take on the free college narrative? Can families afford to wait for it to become reality?
I would love to see free college. I do not think it's realistic in the next decade in the United
Uh,
States. I know that a lot of Europe has a wonderful system for free college. I don't think it's going to work here in the United States, partly because of the way our economic system is set up. They didn't even succeed in getting, this last administration didn't even succeed in getting the student loan debt taken away. So
mhm.
if that didn't work, I don't think we're going to get to a free college situation. Now, some states do offer free college for in-state graduates who are, like, say, for example, Florida. If you graduate from a Florida high school and you're going to a college in Florida, you get a lot of money. Same thing in California. I think in California, if you're going to a junior college or a community college, it's free, and you get a
Wow.
significant discount to go to other colleges in California, the state schools. So there are states that are trying very hard to bring in the free college, but I'm also noticing that those states tend to have a lot of debt.
Mhm.
So I don't know how sustainable that's going to be. So,
Or
like I
if they
said,
will, yes, if they
right,
will set up the price again or changing their system because it doesn't work.
right.
So, okay, we
So,
don't
like I
know
said,
what we don't know.
right, and like I said, I would love to see that be the case. Believe me, I don't
Yes.
like the fact that colleges are costing $40,000, $60,000 a year. I'll tell you, I think that's ridiculous. However, I don't know if the way our education is set up and our economic system, if free college is on the horizon.
Mm. Where does the money go into the college? What do you pay for?
Well, that's an excellent question. You do, of course, have to pay for the professors, and the larger the
Mhm.
school, the more instructors they need. Therefore, they have to have more money to pay for all those instructors. You also have constant upgrades. If you have a school that, for example, is an engineering school or a computer science school or a physics major, they
Mhm.
focus on physics and STEM, they have to have the cutting edge technology in order to make
Mhm.
their education relevant. That takes money,
Yeah.
let's face it.
Yeah. Yeah,
There are
definitely.
absolutely. There have been a couple of private schools that my students have visited and said, your money is really going to the grounds to
Oh.
keep up these buildings, and
Mhm.
you weren't allowed to walk on the grass because the grass was manicured and they wouldn't let you walk on it.
Okay.
Yeah, that happened with one school, and I heard
Looks
it from 2
great.
different people.
Maybe it's meditating.
I don't know, but it definitely was. I was surprised to hear that, but, you know, for the most part, I do think the money goes back into the education. I do think it goes
Mhm.
into paying for the instructors and keeping everything up to date. Unfortunately, a lot of the colleges also have a lot of administration. There are a
Ah.
lot of people on the
Mhm.
payroll that are not directly related to the education.
Mhm.
Can that be avoided? I'm not sure,
Mhm.
but there's always something else that's in the budget that maybe could be cut, but I do think most of it goes toward education.
Yeah, so I was asking this question because wondering if you pay more for the university, the college. Well, I know that you can pay for the name, but do you pay for the quality actually? So that the education is the best one, the professors are the best ones, the technology are the best in the college, in the university, so that you say, okay, if I pay more, I get more. But can be, but shouldn't, or
It
doesn't
can be.
necessarily, right?
It's not necessarily. It can be.
Yeah.
There are schools where I do think you are paying for the name, you're paying for the reputation, but part of that is because the reputation is for such quality education and because the people who come out of that school really are ready to just jump into the workforce. One that I'm thinking of in particular, Drexel, they require that the students every 6 months they do 6 months of schooling and then they take 6 months and actually go out into the workforce. So they are constantly getting real life experience. And so when they come out, they're ready to hit the ground running, and many of them already have jobs. If you're paying for that reputation, it's worth money.
Yeah.
But I actually find that a lot of the smaller schools, I will look for my students to find the schools that say, the best value for the education you get. I will look into the school itself. Does it have a good reputation? Can they get internships right around there? What is their return on investment coming out of college? How much do they
Mhm.
make when they come away from that college? Versus how much do you pay for it? And a lot of those smaller schools, you don't pay as much money. So sometimes
Yes.
you are paying just for the name, and sometimes you can really get a quality education for less money.
Yeah, so I think it's a big field to look at different things here, and I'm so grateful that I could talk to you, Kelly. So if people are curious and say, "Okay, I think I need some help," where can they find you? What do you offer?
Well, they can find me at right now, the best thing is Kelly at yourcollegemoneycoach.com. That's Kelly at yourcollegemoneycoach.com. I will soon have a website up, but mine's under construction, and that's the best way right now. I also have a group coaching program that's going to be starting at the beginning of the new year that
Oh,
is
great.
another option for people to get some assistance that's more accessible to them. It's not the big program where they have to have the one-on-one coaching. So if anybody's interested in hearing about that, they should definitely reach out to me.
So best is to send you an email. And I will place everything in the description. So please reach out if you have any questions here, and I would
Yeah.
have. So thank you very much for being my guest, Kelly. I think it's a wonderful topic to really talk about. It's for the elder children you have. It's not the small ones, but still they are your children and you have to look after and, yes, to set them up on the right way. And here is someone who can really help you to figure out which is your way,
And
right?
thank you so much for having me on. I've really enjoyed it, and I appreciate the chance to help educate families about what's really involved in prepping for college.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And to all the listeners, please subscribe and stay tuned.